Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, "Say, O Muhammad, unto mankind, I do not ask of you any reward except love for my near relatives, and whoever earns good, we give more of good therein, and surely Allah is forgiving and grateful." In the Holy Quran, in multiple verses which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed unto mankind, He has made the love and the obedience of the family of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, as a source of guidance, as a source of light and inspiration, which we should all not just love, but have obedience towards. And when we talk about these verses of the Quran, we have people, whether they be non-Muslims or whether they be our brothers from Ahlul Sunnah, for example, who come to us and ask, who are the Ahlul Bayt? From our understanding, not just through the words of the Quran itself, but through the narrations from the Holy Prophet and from the Imams, we can establish that in the verses of the Holy Quran, the meaning of Ahlul Bayt is limited to 5 people. Of course, we have Rasulullah himself. We also have Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. We have Sayyidah Fatimiyya Majlis salamullahi alayha. And we have Al-Imams Hassan and Hussein alayhi salam. And the early narrators of Hadith and the early scholars after the death of Rasulullah, who began to explain the traditions and the sayings of the Holy Prophet, explained to us even further and confirmed that this is the case. Ibn Abbas, for example, talks about the verse of the Quran I mentioned at the start. When it was revealed, people asked him, and he himself even went to ask Rasulullah about this verse, and he asked, who are the people which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referring to in the Holy Quran in this verse? Rasulullah said, Ali, Fatima, and their 2 sons. Again, we have examples even from Imam Zayn al-Abidin, when he is taken to Damascus in Syria after the Battle of Karbala, where an ignorant man comes to him and asks him, who are you? Which individual do you think you are? Do you think that you are some respectable person? Do you think that you are someone worthy of my respect? This man then went on to curse the Imam, and he went on to curse the members of his family. The Imam replies back to him and says, have you read the Quran? He says, yes, I have. He said, have you read all of the Quran? He says, no, I have not. He says, have you read the Hamim? He says, no, I have not read the Hamim. The Imam says to him, have you read the verse in the Quran which says, I do not ask of you any reward but for my near relatives? The man pauses and he realizes that this verse of the Holy Quran is referring to the family of Rasulullah, and that this man who is in front of him, who he has just insulted and cursed, also belongs to this family. Therefore, this man realizes that he is calling himself Muslim, he is calling himself someone who reads the Quran, yet he insults and does not understand the true nature of the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The fact in itself that we don't just have one verse of the Holy Quran, but we have multiple which talk about and which explain who the Ahlul Bayt are and the necessity for our obedience towards them is enough in itself. But today there is one member from the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam who is important that we speak about, and that is Sayyidah Fatimiyya Majlis. The reason why I want to talk about Sayyidah Fatimiyya Majlis today, even though it is amongst the days of the martyrdom of Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam, is because we were recently in the period of Fatimiyya. When we look at Sayyidah Fatimiyya Majlis, of course the Quran is the first point we look to. But I want to start off with one of the words from our ulama. Imam al-Khamenei talks about the relevance of Sayyidah Fatimiyya Majlis in today's world as an example for Muslim women. And this is something I always try and emphasize. Why? Because not just the Quran, not just the Ahlul Bayt, not just the ulama, but the entire human nature revolves around women. Sayyid says, pay attention to the fact that it was a woman who in that environment goes to the masjid and delivers such a khutbah from which the greatest of ulama can derive lessons from. This is a sign of her divine knowledge and her unique status. Meaning, he is saying that even him, as a marja, as a grand ayatollah, as somebody who people look up to, as somebody who knows the inside out of the religion, he gains lessons from a woman. He is a man, and he recognizes that it is not just men who carry knowledge, it is not just men who shoulder the burden of the religion of Islam, it was a woman, and in this instance Sayyidah Fatimiyya Zahra, of all women, who carried this entire weight of the religion of Islam upon her shoulder and represented it in the most beautiful, powerful and important way. He is also trying to bring to our attention that the status of woman is not low. She is not deemed as cattle, she is not deemed as an animal where she is kept locked in the home or she is kept locked away. No, she has an important role to play, not just religiously, but also in terms of going outside into the world and making a positive difference, whether that be culturally, whether that be through education, whether it be socially, but of course religiously as well, as is the case of Sayyidah Fatima. And the fact that this great woman stood up for herself, and she stood up for her rights, and she confronted the men who tried to take her rights away from her, tells us and shows us that any of the misconceptions which we see amongst Muslims today should be set aside, and that any preconceived negative notions towards women and their role should also be set aside, because they have an extremely valuable role to play. And she is the woman who sets the example for our women as to how to behave. She is knowledgeable. She concerns herself with gaining knowledge. Of course, we know that gaining knowledge, not just about the religion, but about all worldly affairs, is wajib upon both men and women as well. It is not just the case that the man should go and learn his religion and read the books of hadith and go to university. No, this is a woman's job as well. She does not get a free pass, and the man does also not get a free pass to prohibit her from doing so either. But Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra was articulate as well. She learned how to speak eloquently, as a woman should. She also was politically active. She took it upon herself. She gave herself responsibility. She took the initiative to do what was right and not to sit back and let injustice take place before her eyes. But today I want to focus on the verse I mentioned at the start from the Holy Quran regarding the love for the Ahlul Bayt. Now the Quran talks not just about the love, but the obedience that Muslims and that the entirety of mankind should have towards the family of the Holy Prophet. The reason why this is the case, firstly, is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala associates Rasulullah with his family members. He talks about them in terms of being of those who are from Rasulullah. And what we established from the verse, I do not ask for you any reward except the love of my near relatives, relates to Fatimiyya al-Zahra sallallahu alayha, and makes it wajib upon every single Muslim human being to obey her, to follow what she commanded, to do as she says, to love who she loves, and to distance ourselves from whom she was angry with. Anybody who neglects this love, or who acts with hostility, or who acts with disregard for Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra, has also acted with disregard to the Holy Prophet Muhammad himself, and nobody can deny this fact. One time there was a man in the city of Najaf. He wasn't a sheikh, he wasn't a scholar, he wasn't ayatollah, he wasn't anything. He was just a simple man. He used to go about his day-to-day life as any of us would go about our day-to-day lives. He didn't go to the hawza, he had no special religious knowledge. But he used to have a dream every single night. Any of the problems which he would face in his day-to-day life, in this dream, there would be a woman who would come in his dream and who would speak to him. And he wasn't able to see the face of this woman. All he saw was pure light and radiance glowing from her. And what she would do is that every time he had a problem, he would ask her for the solution, and she would provide it to him. Therefore, he lived a life not easy, but with the adequate steps to make his life complete, to make his life happy, to make his life full. One day he is sitting in the mosque with his friends, and one of his friends is a sheikh, and he begins to tell him about this dream that he has every night, about this woman who helps him with all of his problems and his issues. The sheikh says to him, maybe it is because you haven't studied in the house and you haven't studied this, but do you not realize that this woman who is coming to you every single night is Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra sallallahu alayha? He says, she has chosen to be your intercessor, not because of your deep knowledge, not because of your deep intellect, but because you have a deep love for her in your heart. Because you always go to the Majlis, you always go to the Fatimiyya Majlis, you always remember the cause of her other family members, such as Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Because of this, she has chosen to intercede to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for you and help you out with all of your problems. Simply having the deep love for Fatimiyya Zahra and following what she commanded means that we have the potential to speak with her, to be in her presence. And inshallah we ask that she is in our presence tonight in this majlis, because we have narrations which say that she visits every majlis for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and every majlis in which her name is mentioned. But unfortunately, as every Fatimiyya, we realize there are some people who did not follow through on this command of the Holy Quran. There are some people in history and up until today who read the verses of the Holy Quran regarding the Ahlul Bayt, read the verses regarding Fatimiyya Zahra, know about her status, and yet chose to do wrong by her, chose to oppress her, chose to sideline her and take her away from her rightful position and take away her rights. But before I talk about this, I must ask you to go back to the very basics of our religion. Because the issue of the martyrdom and the killing of Sayyidah Fatimiyya Zahra is very simple. And anybody who says that you should not talk about the killing or the martyrdom of Fatimiyya Zahra is wrong, and you should not listen to them. In fact, we must make this incident and this legacy of hers always come through every year, not just in the period of Fatimiyya, but every single day in which we are able to. And it is not sectarian. Some people will try and make it sectarian, make a difference between Shia and Sunni, but this is not the issue that we're talking about here. What we are talking about is a woman who was blessed with divine knowledge and inspiration from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, anybody who does wrong by her, we must call out and we must recognize that that individual did wrong, and calling this out is not sectarian. The reason I must mention this is because this issue of the martyrdom of Az-Zahra is something which angered Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi says, Fatima is a part of me. Whoever loves her loves me, and whoever angers her has angered me. This is found not just in our books of the Shia, it's not just found in Bihar al-Anwar, it is found in the books from our brothers in Ahlul Sunnah, it is found in Sahih Bukhari and in Muslim as well. Therefore, nobody can come and say that this is a hadith of the Shia, because it is found in the books of all Muslims. And therefore every Muslim agrees that whoever loves Fatima loves Rasulullah, and whoever angers Fatima has angered Rasulullah as well. Specifically when we talk about Bihar Anwar, Allama Majlisi, who is the scholar who compiled the book Bihar Anwar, one time he sees Sayyidat Nisa al-Alamin Fatima in his dream. In this dream, she comes to him, and she is holding a copy of the book Bihar in her hand. And he says to her, "What are you doing with my book? I wrote this, I compiled this, I brought all the narrations together. Do you have anything to say to me? Have I done a good job?" She says, "Listen, what you have brought into this book and what you have presented to the world is very good. And you have done a very good job in compiling. Therefore, I encourage everyone to read the gems of wisdom which are found in Bihar al-Anwar, to encourage the young Shabab, when they are starting their religious journey, to read this book, because they will find so many beautiful treasures within it. And inshallah, you have the wisdom to teach your children and to explain some of the things they find in this book." But this hadith from Rasulullah, where he says that whoever loves Fatima loves me, whoever angers her angers me, it establishes that the love for Fatimiyya Zahra is inseparable from the love of Rasulullah. It is impossible for a person to love Rasulullah Muhammad and not to love Fatimiyya Zahra. Anybody who does this does not love Rasulullah. Anyone who does this does not understand Rasulullah, does not connect with him, does not follow him in any sense. And by extension, if somebody does not follow Rasulullah, then he does not follow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A person who angers Rasulullah by default angers Allah. It is inconceivable that a person can anger Rasulullah and make him angry and furious, yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be pleased with him. It doesn't make sense. So we can build a very clear picture here. Anybody who angers or does wrong by Sayyidah Fatimiyya Zahra has angered Rasulullah. And anybody who therefore angers Rasulullah has angered Allah Azza wa Jal himself. Anybody who angers Fatima al-Zahra angers Allah. This is something very scary when we look at the behavior of certain individuals and how they treated this lady of light, this lady who Rasulullah himself in so many statements and sermons talks about his love for her. And as I mentioned, our own books, like Bihar, like Al-Kafi, they are all filled to the brim with a hadith explaining this issue. But I need to reiterate one point, and that is the fact that the martyrdom of Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra is a matter for all of the Muslims, whether they be Ithna Ashari Shia, whether they be Hanbali, Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, Sufi, anything what you want to put a label on. This issue relates to all of them. Our brothers from Ahlul Sunnah, for example, sometimes distance themselves from this matter. But in their books they have, in Sahih Bukhari for example, a hadith narrated by Aisha. And in the hadith, she herself goes on to explain that Fatima al-Zahra became angry with Abu Bakr. And she stayed away from him for a period until she died. And she did not talk to him until she died. She remained alive for 6 months after the death and the martyrdom of the Prophet. And when she died, Ali buried her in the secrecy of night without informing Abu Bakr. And he said the funeral prayer over the body of Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra by himself. This is 2 parts here. Remember, this is from not our books. The first part, according to this hadith, is that Fatima al-Zahra was angry with this individual. And secondly, she was buried in secret by Al Mu'mineen. What did we say? If somebody angers Fatima al-Zahra, who have they angered? The Holy Prophet, Rasulullah. And if they anger Rasulullah, who have they angered? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That individual and the other people who were with him angered Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra. This is agreed upon by all Muslims. We just established this, not just the Shia. All Muslims, the entire Ummah believes in this. Whoever angers her angers the Prophet, and whoever angers the Prophet angers Allah. Again, Rasulullah, if this is not enough for people, comes out with another statement, and he says, indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself is satisfied when Fatima is satisfied, and he is angered by her anger. Multiple statements saying that anybody who angers her angers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore, what is the view of Allah on those who anger him? The Holy Quran again gives us the answer. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, those people who annoy Allah and His Messenger, Allah has cursed them in this world and the hereafter, and He has prepared for them a humiliating punishment. Therefore, I will not say any more, because this is something every Muslim agrees on. Every Muslim understands what we are saying here. Every Muslim understands what this verse of the Quran is telling us. But one of the things I hope we take away is the necessity of holding on to the Quran itself. We all know the famous statement where Rasulullah tells us in his famous sermon that I am leaving behind for you 2 weighty things. If you hold on to them, you will never go astray. The first is the book of Allah, the Holy Quran, and the second is my Ahlul Bayt. It is important for us to go and to learn the books of Ahadith. It is important for us to go and learn the fiqh rulings and to learn ahkam and all of these matters. But the most important thing, first and foremost, is to understand, to read, to recite, and to learn about the tafsir of the Holy Quran. There is a reason why Rasulullah says Quran and Ahlul Bayt, not the other way around. The Quran comes first, and through the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, we truly understand what the Quran means. We truly understand the depth and the treasure behind the words of the Holy Quran. As we know the famous statement from Rasulullah, where he says, I am the city of knowledge, and Ali is its gate. If you want to get to the treasure, if you want to get to the hidden gems of Rasulullah and therefore Islam and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, first you must go through Ali to understand these matters. In the verse of purification, Allah Azza wa Jalla says, Allah only desires to keep away any uncleanness away from you, O people of the house, O Ahlul Bayt, and to purify you with a thorough purification. Now some people, one day somebody actually came to me about this verse. He said, I don't believe that the Ahlul Bayt and the 12 Imams are ma'soom. I said to them, have you read the verse of purification where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He will remove all the uncleanness away from you? He said, yes. I said, okay, what does it mean? Does it mean that when the Imam is in battle and he gets cut and the blood flows from him, he is pure, and that it doesn't mean he is impure? Or, forgive me, when they use the toilet, they are pure and they don't need to wash themselves? No, this isn't the case. This verse can only be interpreted as meaning that all of the evils which are present within a human being and the temptation and desire for sin has been removed from the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. This is the meaning of the verse of purification. And all of the Muslims agree that the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam who are referenced in the Quran here are Ahlul Kisa, the 5 people we mentioned at the start. Imam Hassan alayhi salam in one of his sermons says that I am from the people of the house, I am from the Ahlul Bayt, whom Jibreel came down to and came up from. And I am from the Ahlul Bayt whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has cleared uncleanness away from and purified with a thorough purification. But Fatimiyya Majlis is also part of this. Fatimiyya Majlis has also got all impurity and uncleanness and sin taken away from her by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She is mentioned as being free from all impurities. So if Fatimiyya Majlis is free from all impurities, then what is the status of a person who takes away her rights, who oppresses her, and who eventually kills her? Is this what we deem as a pure person? Is this what we classify as the sanctity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that person? Or do we class any individual who does wrong by her and who humiliates her and who kills her as an impure person, as a dirty person? The answer is there, and the answer is clear. But lastly, we all know that the dua of the mother and of our mothers is one of the most impactful, powerful du'as and supplications and blessings which any human being can be rewarded with. The du'a of the mother is one of those who is almost guaranteed to be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala due to the nature and due to the importance in the status of a mother. Going back to al-Tamimi Majlis, we all know and we all recognize that he was a pious scholar. He was extremely knowledgeable, one of the most esteemed ulama that we have. And we also know that his mother was also a very pious woman, was also a very intelligent woman, who used her intellect and who taught the religion of Islam. One day she tells us that she used to pray all the time, constantly for her son. She used to say, Ya Allah, make him be a true scholar, make him be a true faqih. And what we can see is that from her persistent dua and from her persistent supplication and request to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this dua came true. al-Tamimi Majlis laid some of the cornerstones for our religion today and how we understand our religion. Now you must think of Fatimiyya Majlis when we talk about this. She is Abiha, she is Sayyidat Nisa Jannah and Nisa al-Alameen as well. She is the woman who is the chief of all the women of this world and the women of paradise as well. And as we said, inshallah, she is present in this majlis as well. So she will be watching our actions, she will be watching our behavior, not just here, but in our everyday lives as well. And we should strive to be of those people who Fatimiyya Majlis, like that man I mentioned at the beginning of the lecture, who has such love for her that she intercedes and makes dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on his behalf. Because one of the most beautiful things we could ever desire is the intercession of the Shifa of Sayyidah Fatimiyya Majlis. I will finish with a story from Ayatollah Sayyid Hadi al-Milani. One time he was sitting in his majlis, and after the majlis ends, he notices that there is a couple from Almania, from Germany, sitting in the majlis. And after it, they come up to him and they say, Sayyid, very nice to meet you. We want to become Muslim. He says, okay, you can become Muslim. But he senses there is a story behind why they want to convert to Islam. He asks them to explain why they want to become Muslim. And the couple begins to explain that a few years prior, they had a daughter. And unfortunately, their daughter was in a very severe accident. As a result of this accident, she was in constant pain, and many of her ribs had been fractured and broken. They took her to the doctors and they took her to the specialists in the hospital. And they said, this girl needs surgery. She must go under intense surgery. We must cut open the area and we must fix the fractures and we must make it right for her. Otherwise, she will be in intense pain and it can even lead to her dying. But this girl, she had so much trauma and she was terrified from her accident of having the surgery. So she refused. She said, I would rather die than go through this surgery again. I would rather die than have my body cut open. So she refuses, and her parents have no choice but to bring her back home. So she comes home in agony. Days went by, weeks went by, eventually even months go by, but the pain did not go away. Every day she is sitting at home in bed with severe pain coming from her ribs. One day the parents overhear this girl, the daughter, speaking to the maid, to the servant in the house. The maid is an Iranian woman, Alwiya. And the maid says to her, tell me about how you feel. The girl says, I am in such pain that I would give up all of the money and all of the savings I have in my bank account just to get rid of this pain. I would give anything in this world to get rid of the feeling which I have just now. The Iranian maid says to her, I know a doctor. Her ribs were also broken. She also lived in pain with broken ribs. But I know that she will be able to cure you. So the girl says, who is this maid? Tell me her name so that I can get in contact with her and inshallah she can help me, she can save me. The maid says to her, this doctor's name is Fatimiyya Majlis. Call upon her with everything you have in your heart and see what will happen. The girl, when she hears this, has a very powerful, strange feeling come over her. In her heart, she feels something click. And she begins to call out, Oh Fatimiyya Majlis, Oh Fatimiyya Majlis, please cure me, please heal me, please come to me and give me the aid in which I need. The nurse is also taken aback by this. She begins to cry with the girl. She says, Ya Fatimiyya Majlis, come and save this girl. Come and take away all of the pain which she has within her ribs. They called out the name of Fatimiyya Majlis until they were exhausted and they fell asleep with the tears flowing from their eyes. The next morning the girl wakes up, but she has no pain in her ribs. She has no pain anywhere else in her body. In fact, when she is examined, they look at her and they say it is as if she has never been in any accident before, as if she has never been injured, she has never had these broken ribs. She calls her mom and her dad to come to her. They come, they say, what happened? Previously you had been moaning, crying all day in agony and in pain. Now you have nothing. You have a smile on your face. What is the reason for this? The girl tells them, last night there was a woman who entered into my room. She was radiant with light. She was radiant with kindness, with mercy. And what she did was she came up to me and she placed her hand on my rib. And she said, you will be healed after this. And when the girl asked her, who are you? The woman said, I am Fatimiyya Majlis. I am the woman you called upon. I am the woman who also had the broken ribs like the one that you had. She, Fatimiyya Majlis, had to go through the pain of having the broken ribs. She understood the pain in which this young girl felt and did not want her to feel that pain as well. So she came to her and she cured her with the permission and with the authority of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the effect that Fatimiyya Majlis has. This is the effect, and there are countless stories, countless, where she comes to people in need who call out her name and helps them with all of their issues. And lastly, when we talk about Fatimiyya Majlis, we cannot turn a blind eye to the oppression which takes place in the world today, whether it be in Gaza, Sudan, anywhere else in the world. Those who stay silent on these injustices are from the people who would stand on the opposite side of Fatimiyya Majlis. We cannot stay quiet just as those people who stayed quiet when Fatimiyya Majlis' land of Fadak was taken away from her, when she was martyred. We cannot be the same as those people when Imam Hussein ﷺ calls out, is there anybody who can help me? All of the people who promised him help were nowhere to be seen. And we cannot be like those people who said that they would support the righteousness of the Khilafah, but when Amir al-Mu'mineen was taken away from his rightful position, they said nothing to help. We must be different from that, and we must be of those true people who stand on the side of the Ahlul Bayt, and inshallah the side of Imam Sahib Asr al-Zaman, Imam al-Mahdi, And to finish, I ask you to pray for the mu'mineen and mazlumeen and for all of the shuhada. Please recite Surah Al-Fatiha after salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.